Columbine, one of the most notorious school shootings in the history of the United States. But could it have been all avoided? You have Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, who were two students at the school who carried out the most heinous attack on their school on April 20th, 1999. And we're just a couple of months past the 25th anniversary. And if you look at it, Columbine was the blueprint for a lot of the school shootings that took place after, because a lot of the shooters idolized Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. If Columbine would have never happened, would we have had a Sandy Hook or a Uvalde or any of the other school shootings? Maybe. But would the school shooters in those cases have idolized Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold? Stay tuned. I'm about to get into it. When you think of Columbine, you think of one of the most horrific school shootings in American history. You think of two people, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, who killed 12 of their own classmates and one teacher, Dave Sanders. Dave Sanders died protecting the students of Columbine. One of the survivors recently passed away. And she passed away still asking questions on exactly why she was shot and why she was paralyzed.
Erupted again today, suddenly and with a vengeance.
Columbine High in Littleton, Colorado. It has been a horror.
In 1999, two high school students went on a deadly rampage, and the images seared themselves into the nation's collective memory.
One of the worst school shootings ever. 15 dead bodies still being identified.
An American nightmare that too many schools know too well.
Yet how much of our explanation for that nightmare was right?
The entire country was confident that these two killers were two loner outcasts from the trenchcoat mafia who were targeting jocks in a revenge fantasy. None of that was true.
Misguided perceptions of the Columbine shooting continue to influence us today.
Yes, I am a teacher at Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun.
On April 20th, 1999, two students culminated months of planning by donning black trench coats and attacking their school. Armed with guns and an arsenal of homemade bombs, they terrorized teachers and peers.
They had a couple of duffel bags at their feet, and we witnessed them pulling out what we assumed to be paintball guns that later on turned out to be something completely different.
My secretary comes in and yells that there had been a report of gunfire and bombs exploding. So I ran out of my office, saw a gunman coming towards me. I remember hearing gunfire, and I remember glass breaking behind me.
I was laying in broken glass from the window that had gotten shot out. All I could hear was the fire alarms going off. And then the gunshots at a distance.
Okay, has anybody been injured, ma'am? Okay. Yes. And the school is in a panic, and I'm in the library. I've got students down under the table, kids. Heads under the table.
If it hadn't been for that teacher's quick thinking that morning by telling the students to get under the tables and get their heads under the tables, there would have been a lot more loss of life there in that library. 12 young students, basically kids, 16, 17, 18 years old, 12 of them lost their life at the hands of Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, which is a truly tragic event because they never got to grow up. They never got to get married. They never got to have kids. They never got to graduate.
We were all crouched under the tables, and we could hear the gunshots getting louder. And a couple times there was a big boom, and the floor would shake.
On the floor! You better stay on the floor! Oh, God! Stay in the line with me. Oh, God! The gun is right outside the library door.
They came into the library. Eric leaned under the table and pointed his gun at me. I mean, I was like trembling under there like a little leaf.
I saw the shotgun, stared at the shotgun, and all I remember is it seemed like the barrel of the gun was the size of a cannon.
As soon as that bullet entered my backpack and actually paralyzed me, shattering my vertebrae, that's when the pain set in.
So there was like Eric at my right. Said, "Hey," and I said, "What are you doing?" And it still like chills me how he was just like killing people.
The killers fatally shot 12 students and a teacher in less than 20 minutes. Then they turned the guns on themselves.
12 kids died on my watch, along with the teacher. In our lives, you're not supposed to bury your kids, and they were all my kids.
Imagine how hard it had to be for the principal of that high school, like he just said there. 12 kids and one teacher died on his watch. That's got to be truly a gut punch to that principal. He feels like he let those kids and that teacher down, which it wasn't his fault. He didn't have any idea what Eric and Dylan were going to do. And I feel sorry for that principal.
Before the world had fully grasped what had happened inside the school, there was a scramble to make sense of it.
We're getting coverage from 4 stations in the Denver area of a shooting at a high school.
A still developing situation, and one that looks like it's not going to be over anytime soon.
Horrors like Columbine terrify us, and we need an explanation. So even if we don't have an answer, we find one. And we find it really too fast.
2 witnesses that we talked to on the telephone describe them as members of the trench coat mafia. These are kids they claim routinely dress in black trench coats.
Kids were watching this on TV. And also, it was the early days of cell phones. If they weren't seeing it, their friends were watching it on TV, calling them on their cell phones, and letting them know.
They were saying that that they wanted to do this for their revenge, for the school, I guess, because, I mean, they're such an outcast at our school.
This little round and round feedback chamber. So when a kid goes on TV and says, oh, yeah, they were outcasts, another kid who doesn't really know the killers well or at all thinks, oh, they're outcasts. Oh, I didn't realize that. Then when he's interviewed, he says they're outcasts. So you're contaminating the witness pool like that.
And speculation about a black-coated mafia and its supposed grievances ran wild.
A gang that apparently hated athletes.
It was all because people were mean to him last year.
The Trenchcoat Mafia is more than just black clothes. These boys were dangerously strange.
In a yearbook photo of some group members that was broadcast nationwide, neither gunman appeared. One member of the Trenchcoat Mafia, John Savage, said there was a good reason for their absence.
Eric and Dylan were not at all a part of the things that we did as a group. They didn't hang out with us. They weren't Trenchcoat Mafia at all.
And he says the media's description of him and his friends had little basis in fact.
The Trenchcoat Mafia was like we were video game nerds. We sit around the table and play Dungeons and Dragons, which is just about the least dangerous thing you could do.
It was a group of friends that had similar interests. Some kids referred to them as the Trenchcoat Mafia, but it was not that it was an organized club.
But the explanation about outcast loners seeking revenge against bullies had the dual advantage of being both dramatic and familiar.
Another time where media messed up, labeling Dylan and Eric as part of the Trenchcoat Mafia, when they weren't even in the Trenchcoat Mafia, like John Savage just stated. They never even hung out with the Trenchcoat Mafia.
What happened here at Littleton is a grotesque distortion of high school fears and rivalries involving cliques, the in-groups and out-groups that are a part of teen life in America.
Author Dave Cullen spent nearly 10 years on his account of Columbine, researching police records, the killers' diaries, and their lives at the school. He said the boys had busy social lives and didn't seem motivated by bullying.
There was lots of bullying at Columbine. It was a high school in America. Did it have anything to do with driving these two boys to murder? I cannot find any evidence of that.
The killers directed their hostility toward the whole student population, placing propane bombs set to go off in the cafeteria at lunchtime. But the devices failed to detonate as planned.
Columbine actually wasn't a successful shooting. It was a failed bombing. How much more indiscriminate can you get? 2 big bombs to kill everyone who happens to be in that part of the building at the start of a lunch.
Cullen describes the killer's motives as a cocktail of malice, self-loathing, and a craving for fame. Over time, they became something like a two-man cult, bent on making their mark on the world in one final act.
Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were obsessed with the game Doom. They were obsessed with the movie Natural Born Killers. They idolized the two characters, Mickey and Mallory. And they even named this shooting NBK, Natural Born Killers.
It was a murder-suicide for both of them. For Eric, it was primarily a murder. For Dylan, it was primarily suicide. They took the tactics of terrorists and said, we can do the same stuff for our own aggrandizement. Eric talked about his audience in his journal and whether they were going to understand this.
And there was one message observers seemed to take from the event immediately.
School shootings have become a dark stain on American life.
The phenomenon of kids turning guns on their schoolmates is all too familiar.
And it's not just Littleton. We know that now. We've had lots and lots and lots of places.
Columbine came after a string of school shootings in Oregon, Arkansas, and other states. Reaction to the Colorado massacre helped fuel a national movement towards school security.
Parents across the country are demanding to know what their schools are doing to keep their children safe.
Today, nearly half of public schools surveyed nationwide employ police or hired guards. At least 21 states mandate lockdown drills for school shooting scenarios, and millions of dollars have been spent on everything from metal detectors to anti-bullying programs.
When people hear that somebody was caught planning a Columbine, the world knows what that means.
More than a decade after Columbine, we're still struggling to figure out not only what causes school shootings, but whether or not we're seeing more of them. And coverage of the issue offers little clarity.
School shootings are on the rise in America. I'm telling you, I have the numbers to show it.
But there's actually very little consensus on those numbers.
Experts say that the number is statistically unchanged since the 1990s.
The number of school shootings in America has been rapidly in decline over the last decade.
Researchers can't agree on a methodology for tallying up attacks. They make different decisions about whether to include non-fatal attacks on schools or foiled ones, or even on-campus suicides or gun accidents. And this leads to vastly different final numbers.
We unfortunately tend to judge how frequently events occur by how often we hear about them. And that, of course, depends on news reports of these things happening.
The death toll rises in an attack inside a school cafeteria.
In Los Angeles, 2 students were wounded in an accidental shooting. A school shooting in Texas leaves 2 students injured.
One statistic with a more clear-cut definition is overall homicides in schools. The Center for Disease Control regularly tracks those numbers, and the trend line is clear. While they vary from year to year, school homicides are essentially flat across the decades. They're also extremely rare.
There are over 300 shootings every day in the United States. How many of those occur in schools? Almost none of them.
And rare as they are, when school shootings do happen, there's some evidence that past attacks and intense media focus on the killers have helped inspire future ones.
Song-hee Cho wrote that he was inspired by the Columbine killers attack 8 years ago today.
The gunman, Adam Lanza, was obsessed with the 1999 Columbine high school attack.
And some news outlets are beginning to take notice.
We are not, during this broadcast, using the name of the shooter. Often it seems that in history remembers the names of murderers and not the names of victims.
It's good that school shootings are still shocking because it shows that they're really rare. So I think it's important to kind of keep in mind that there are a lot of schools all over the world where no one's ever been shot.
I could spend my entire life living in fear, wondering when's the next attack or when's the next person going to do that, but that would be it. I'd be living in fear. I would be giving in to what they wanted to happen.
Will there ever be another shooting like Columbine in our lifetime? There was one really close to it, Sandy Hook. And like that gentleman just said here a minute ago, the shooter for that idolized Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. And just like Anderson Cooper said, people idolize the murderers, but think nothing of the victims. 12 young souls lost their lives that day at Columbine. Over what? Over two of their fellow students disgruntled not only at them, but at the school. Something in America has to change when it comes to people like Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. Yes, they took their own lives right there in that library where they killed those 12 kids. And Dave Sanders, a teacher that Dylan had shot, never even had a chance to survive. By the time the SWAT team got into the school, he died on the way to the hospital. And if you think about it, the law enforcement that day that had the school surrounded, with the downstairs to the library door open, never even attempted to rush into the library, even though they could hear the sounds of those kids being murdered. They never left behind their cars. I hope you guys have a good night. This is True Crime Unleashed, and I'm out, guys. Peace.